Sabora Gagani came into the world on September 14, 1991 in Tirana, Albania. At a certain point, Sabora's parents went their separate ways, and not long after, her mother, Elisabetta, chose to leave with her children, moving to Rome, Italy. There, Elisabetta worked relentlessly to raise her children by herself. Sabora was recognized for her bright and cheerful nature, and quickly gained popularity among her classmates, who lovingly referred to her as CB. She was an exceptionally attractive young woman with dark skin, tall and slim, long flowing hair, and a lively personality. Sabora enjoyed spending time with friends, going to parties, and listening to music at very loud volumes. According to her mother, she had a profound affection for children and aspired to become a teacher. However, she was also drawn to the modeling world and took her first step toward that dream by entering and winning a regional beauty pageant. Despite her ambitions in modeling, Sabora's family required financial assistance. So, she started working as a waitress at a local restaurant, where she quickly became liked by everyone. Destiny shifted when Sabora was 18 years old and met Marco, a 31-year-old man who was tall, handsome, and charming. Although little information is available about him, it was confirmed that he had at least one sister and had been married before. By the time he met Sabora, he was already divorced. Sabora fell deeply in love with Marco, and the feelings were shared. Unknown to Sabora, Marco had a troubled history. According to people close to him, Marco was known to local police because of his violent behavior and problems with drug use. About a year into their relationship, Sabora and Marco informed her family that they had decided to relocate to Spain. As Marco claimed there were insufficient job opportunities for him in Italy, they planned to settle in Torremolinos, a Spanish municipality in the province of Maga. Elisabetta was unhappy about her daughter moving to another country with a man much older than her. But Sabora was an adult, and despite her mother's worries, the couple moved forward with their plan. After arriving in Torremolinos in 2011, Sabora and Marco settled in the beach area of La Caruela. At first the couple appeared happy, and Sabora stayed in close contact with her mother, communicating daily through phone calls or social media. She quickly found employment as a waitress at a local restaurant, and Marco obtained a job as a cook and pizza maker. However, it soon became clear that the issue was not a shortage of opportunities in Italy, but Marco's inability to maintain a job, as he was also unable to keep steady work in Spain. As time went on, Marco's true character began to emerge, and arguments, driven by jealousy, with Sabora became more and more frequent. Elisabetta saw this personally when she visited the couple to observe how they were living. During her stay, she noticed that the relationship was declining, marked by bitter and frequent arguments, even when she was present. Over the next month, Sabora returned to Italy multiple times, with some reports indicating that she only remained in Spain during holiday periods. It is possible that her return was also influenced by the fact that her residence permit had expired, and that she had been traveling using a false Italian identity. By late 2013, approaching the third anniversary of their relationship, Sabora returned to her mother's home and confided that she had left Marco permanently. She was exhausted from trying to make the relationship work and had decided not to go back, realizing that nothing was improving. Shortly afterward, however, Marco appeared at the family's home, as often happens, promising that everything would change. He even proposed marriage, and unfortunately, Sabora was persuaded by his assurances. Things improved temporarily, but eventually, Jealousy and violence once again took control of their relationship. Elizabetha later remembered that her daughter began to feel increasingly afraid. On one occasion, Sabora told her mother that if she wanted to leave Marco, she would have to disappear, because otherwise he would not let her go. By June 2014, it seemed evident that any possibility of reconciliation between Sabora and Marco was gone. Sabora left the home they shared and moved into an apartment. Once she had settled in, she called her mother and told her that she had ended things with Marco for good and that she finally felt as free as a butterfly. However, things began to feel strange when in early July, Marco contacted Elizabetha to ask whether Sabora had returned to Italy. Shocked, Elizabetha asked what had happened, and Marco told her that 2 days earlier, they had a serious argument, after which Sabora left the house, leaving all of her belongings behind. Elizabetha did not believe his account, because Sabora had told her a month earlier about her move, making it clear that Marco was lying by saying she had only left 2 days before, adding to the concern. Throughout that entire time, Elizabetha had received no news from her daughter. Deep down, she hoped that Sabora was doing exactly what she had said she would do, leaving Marco and disappearing. But the situation became chilling when in a later conversation, Marco gave Elizabetha a different version of events. He claimed that a security guard at the residence had seen Sabora leaving with 2 suitcases, stating that she had departed without revealing where she was going. This conflicted with his earlier claim that she had left without taking anything. The family waited anxiously for Sabora to reach out. They were convinced that even if she wanted to vanish from Marco's life without disclosing her location, she would never completely sever contact with her siblings, especially her mother. The last time anyone heard from her was on July 7, 2014, when she exchanged a WhatsApp message with Marco. After that, her phone was disconnected, and there was no activity on her social media accounts. The following week, Marco traveled to Italy and visited Sabora's family. He had coffee with Elizabetha, mourning the disappearance of his beloved, and spoke with Sabora's brother, expressing disbelief that she had left without explanation while insisting that he had no idea what might have happened to her. During this period, Marco told Elizabetha that he had printed missing person posters and had been posting them throughout the area. He also asserted that Sabora had been seen getting onto a bus and then suggested that she might have traveled to Argentina. In addition, he said he had heard that she had been spotted with a dark-skinned man with whom she appeared to be arguing. However, Marco never did the most reasonable thing, which was to report Sabora's disappearance to the authorities. That duty fell to Elizabetha, who not only reported her daughter missing, but also suggested that Marco might be involved. The police opened an investigation questioning Marco as the last person known to have seen her, but he repeated the same version of events. Authorities confirmed that the couple had separated, although it appeared they were still in contact, as some of Sabora's personal belongings were found in the residence. This disturbing situation continued for the following months. In 2015, in an effort to broaden the search online and nationwide, authorities sought assistance from an association dedicated to spreading information and images of people who had disappeared under unexplained circumstances. Unfortunately, this effort also produced no results. Sabora's family refused to give up and made sure that Italian media also circulated information about the missing young woman. Life went on for everyone, though in very different ways. While Sabora's family lived with the torment of not knowing where she was. Clinging to the increasingly faint hope that she would return, Marco's life continued, albeit marked by the same bad habits. During this time, Marco changed his appearance, shaving his head, growing a beard, and entering into 2 relationships, both of which ended with the women filing complaints against him. Marco remained in Spain, where to those around him, he appeared to be an ordinary man, always greeting his neighbors with a smile. A regular at the gym, a fan of target shooting, and an enthusiast of sports such as baseball and martial arts. By 2023, 9 years had passed since Sabora's disappearance, and Marco had a new partner, a woman named Paula. What was known about Paula's life was that before Marco, she had been in a stable relationship, from which she had a daughter and a son. After that relationship ended, and once she began living with Marco, they had a child together. One thing that had not changed in Marco's life was his instability at work. And over the years, he had held several different jobs. While working at a pizzeria, he became friends with a man named Victor Molina. One day, Marco approached Victor asking for work, and stating that he had been unemployed for some time, and that his family was struggling. Victor, wanting to help, gave both Marco and Paula jobs at his restaurant, where Victor's sister Victoria had been working until then. Later, Victor even rented an apartment to the couple. Paula proved to be an excellent worker, earning the trust and affection of her employers. However, the same could not be said for Marco, with whom Victor experienced several problems. The breaking point came when Victoria arrived at the restaurant one day and found the employee bathroom door completely destroyed. Paula, deeply embarrassed, admitted that Marco had broken the door, accusing her of hiding there to have intimate encounters with co-workers. This incident led Victor to transfer Marco to work under his direct supervision at another location. During her time at the restaurant, Paula earned not only professional trust, but also personal affection. Victoria, in particular, knew that the relationship between Marco and Paula was not merely troubled, but practically non-existent. Paula confided that Marco had physically assaulted her. Her employers urged her to report him to the authorities, knowing that with his history, he would likely end up in jail. However, Paula minimized the incident, saying it was only 4 punches and a kick. To her employers, this explanation was shocking, but there was an underlying reason why Paula continued living with Marco. She revealed that social services had taken her children away after drugs belonging to Marco were found in their home. Paula admitted that she wanted to leave Marco, with whom she said she no longer had a romantic relationship, but she lacked the means to do so and needed to maintain the appearance of a stable relationship in order to regain custody of her children. Since she had secured steady employment, Paula felt she was closer to achieving that goal. She hoped to save enough money to rent her own place and separate from Marco. She also shared that she had been undergoing weekly drug tests at a clinic for months to prove she was drug-free, and that she hoped to be reunited with her children by October of that year. While Marco was working at the new establishment, his performance did not improve, and he lasted only a month and a half. Victor, the owner, discovered that a kitchen knife was missing and reported the theft to the authorities. Shortly after filing the report, Victor decided to fire Marco. Just a few days after Marco's dismissal on Tuesday, May 16, 2023, Paula was in high spirits. It was her day off and she had plans for the evening. The next day, Wednesday, May 17, 2014, Victoria was looking forward to hearing about Paula's night. When she arrived for her shift, Meanwhile, back at the apartment, Paula was getting ready for work. At around 11:30 in the morning, loud screams were heard coming from the apartment, shared by Marco and Paula. While arguments between the couple were not unusual, there was something different about Paula's cries this time. Her voice sounded desperate, and she was begging for help. Victor and another employee immediately ran upstairs and began pounding on the door, asking what was happening and pleading with Paula to tell them if she was okay. One of the men claimed he heard faint whimpering in the background. Seconds later, Marco's voice was heard, assuring them that everything was fine, and that Paula had simply gone back to bed. Paula's voice was no longer heard. The door remained closed and something in Marco's tone raised alarm for the concerned men. Victor ran to retrieve a spare key to the apartment from his house, while the other employee went to get his phone to call the police. Hearing the men leave the door, Marco calmly exited the apartment and left the building. Minutes later, police officers and medical personnel arrived at the scene. They knocked on the door again, but there was no response. Victor unlocked the door for them, and what they discovered was fine. Inside was far worse than anyone could have imagined. Lying on the floor was Paula's lifeless body, her clothes soaked red with numerous stab wounds. The paramedics could do nothing but pronounce her dead at the scene, and it was clear that the suspected attacker was no longer there. Within minutes, the area was filled with law enforcement officers, investigators, and medical personnel. Authorities immediately launched a manhunt for the suspect based on witness statements. Their efforts were successful. A local resident identified Marco from a photograph at a nearby establishment. Less than 6 hours after the incident, at 5:30 that same evening, Marco was arrested while calmly drinking a beer. He did not resist, and the arrest drew the attention of everyone present in the establishment and the surrounding area. Marco was taken to the police station for questioning. While initial reports stated that Paula had suffered 14 stab wounds to her body, in the days that followed, new details emerged that revealed the extent of Marco's manipulation. It was discovered that on the night Paula went out, Marco had been searching for her, even questioning local taxi drivers about who had driven her and where she had gone. This was only the beginning, as many more revelations were still to come. Upon learning of Marco's arrest for the murder of his then-girlfriend, the pain of Sabora's mother, Elizabetha, resurfaced. She once again voiced the plea that had been her cry for many years. Incredibly, Elizabeth's plea was answered almost immediately. As Marco was being escorted through the police station, he stopped in front of a bulletin board displaying images from ongoing investigations. Among them was the missing person poster for Sabora Gagani, whose case had remained open for 9 years. According to officers, upon seeing the poster, Marco paused and dropped a bombshell. He said he wanted to cooperate because the memory of what he had done would haunt him forever. He confessed that he and Sabora had argued, that he had killed her, and that he had buried her in an apartment. Not only that, but while officers were still stunned, Marco offered to show them where he had hidden her body, in the apartment they had once shared. Authorities, cautious of his intentions, did not immediately accept his offer. Returning to the immediate case on Saturday, May 20th, Marco, 45, was formally presented before the court. He exercised his right to remain silent and answered only questions from his defense attorney, who requested a psychiatric and toxicological evaluation for her client in relation to Paula's murder. During this hearing, Marco said nothing about his earlier statements regarding Sabora's case. The court ordered that Marco be held in provisional custody without bail while being investigated for the crime of murder within the context of gender violence, and that he undergo a drug addiction protocol that same day. It was also noted that the court had reopened the investigation into the disappearance of Sabora Gagani, which had occurred 9 years earlier. From that point forward, investigators set out to verify the truth of Marco's statements made at the police station. Over the next several days, a large-scale operation was launched. On Monday, May 22, officers went to the apartment where Marco and Sabora had once lived. At that time, the apartment was occupied by another couple who cooperated fully with authorities. In the days that followed, specialized teams carefully searched every inch of the apartment near the town hall and police station where Sabora's body was allegedly hidden. The search began with a visual inspection for any irregularities in the walls or floors, but nothing unusual was found. Further inspections involved the use of densitometers and micro cameras. Small holes were drilled in various areas of the apartment to insert cameras and examine the inside of the walls and floors. However, these efforts produced no positive results. According to the press, Marco continued speaking from prison, where he allegedly claimed that he had used acid to dispose of Sabora's remains. Meanwhile, investigators refused to give up even after 3 unsuccessful searches of the apartment. During the 4th attempt, officers reviewed the building's floor plans and noticed that 2 identical apartments were located on the same floor. When they inspected the twin apartment, they realized there was a large space in the bedroom that did not correspond to the layout of the apartment under investigation. With this discovery, specialists focused on a specific wall that appeared untouched and identical to the rest of the building, but actually concealed a hollow space behind it. With the required authorization, on June 6, officers broke through the wall. Behind it, they found a large wooden crate filled with lime. As the lime was removed, the first grim discoveries were made. The first item uncovered was a plastic bag containing a knife with dried blood. Next, they found objects that appeared to belong to the victim, followed by a bouquet of flowers placed on top of several plastic bags. Inside the bags, they discovered a camping sleeping bag and within it, the remains of a woman. After the horrific discovery, the body was transported for an autopsy to determine the cause of death and to confirm whether the remains were indeed those of Sabora. Meanwhile, in Italy, Sabora's family was on edge after a friend informed them of Marco's arrest for Paula's murder and the search for Sabora's body. Elisabetta said that the news of her daughter's death at Marco's hands struck her like a bucket of cold water. She revealed that the only happiness she had known during those years of uncertainty was becoming a grandmother through her son. She also shared that Sabora's father had died from illness without ever learning what had happened to his daughter. Shortly afterward, Spanish authorities contacted Elisabetta to request a DNA sample to conclusively confirm that the body hidden in the wall was her daughter's. However, there was little doubt as the remains bore tattoos that had been reported as identifying features when the disappearance was first reported. A Spanish team traveled to Elisabetta's home to collect a saliva sample, and the DNA comparison left no uncertainty. The body was indeed that of Sabora Gagani, who had disappeared at 22 years old and would have been 31 at the time of discovery. After the autopsy, it was revealed that despite the condition of the remains, the cause of death was multiple stab wounds. More than 5 months after Sabora's remains were found in the wall of the apartment, she had shared with the man who would become her executioner. Her family announced that she would finally be coming home. At last, Sabora's family and friends were able to say a final goodbye during a funeral service. At the end of the ceremony, friends of the young woman released balloons into the sky with messages written for someone who had once been a cheerful, kind friend who only dreamed of becoming a model and finding happiness. After enduring the most painful experience a family can face, all efforts were now directed toward ensuring that justice was served and that the person responsible for Sabora's untimely death would be punished to the fullest extent of the law. On Tuesday, January 30, 2024, Marco testified before the court during a hearing requested by his defense attorney. However, instead of speaking, he submitted a 17-page handwritten letter in which he admitted responsibility for Paula's death, but with significant qualifications. In the letter, Marco claimed that he and Paula had a turbulent relationship, fueled by heavy consumption of alcohol and cocaine, which they both used. He confessed to killing Paula, but alleged that she had been agitated because he owed her $50, and she had discovered his infidelity. Marco stated that his only mistake was defending himself too aggressively, though he did not explain how the woman's wounds ended up on her back if the attack was supposedly self-defense. Despite his partial confession, Marco remained silent about Sabora's case, saying only that he had wrapped her body in bags, placed it inside a wooden box, covered it with flowers, filled the box with lime, and built a false wall to hide everything. However, he denied responsibility for her death, even while admitting that what he had done was disgusting. Among all his lies, Marco claimed that since his arrest, he had undergone a deep spiritual awakening and was now profoundly remorseful. Marco asserted that members of the Albanian mafia were responsible for Sabora's death. According to his distorted account, these dangerous men had loaned him toward 25,000 to start a business, specifically a brothel. However, Marco claimed that Colombians had stolen the money after a night of partying, leaving him without the funds to begin the business and unable to repay the debt. One day, the Albanian mobster allegedly came to his home to collect the money. There were 4 armed men. One pointed a gun at Marco, while the other 3 confronted Sabora. Marco claimed that during the heated confrontation, one of the mobsters attacked and killed Sabora. He added that the mobsters took 29 zalozand he had hidden in the house from his small-scale drug dealing, and told him the remaining debt would be forgiven if he disposed of Sabora's body. Given the circumstances, Marco said he agreed to their conditions. He claimed he spent 2 days in the apartment with Sabora's body, uncertain what to do before ultimately deciding to wall it up. If you found this case fascinating, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the Hidden Cases files. We post crime case videos every night. Until next time, stay sharp, stay vigilant.